8 oldest trees in the world. Although humanity is destroying the planet quicker than Mother Nature can recover, fortunately, there are still natural wonders in this world that have survived for thousands of years. All of the trees on this list were at least 3,500 years old. Unfortunately, a few of these ancient giants were destroyed by human hands. The rest of the surviving trees on this list are protected to prevent their destruction, and one of the oldest individual trees even has a secret location not disclosed to the public. With continued conservation efforts, hopefully these trees will live for thousands of years more. The Senator was the biggest and oldest bald cypress tree in the world, located in Big Tree Park, Longwood, Florida. At the time of its demise in 2012, it was 125 feet 38 meters tall, with a trunk diameter of 17.5 feet 5.3 meters. The tree was thought to have been destroyed by a fire from a lightning strike, but it was later discovered that the fire had been accidentally started by a drug user. As of 1993, the Senator was estimated to be 3,500 years old, making it the 5th oldest tree in the world. The tree's volume had previously been estimated at 4,300 cubic feet 120 cubic meters, but a 2006 survey by Will Blosen of the Native Tree Society has measured the volume at well over 5,100 cubic feet 140 cubic meters, making the Senator not only the largest bald cypress in the United States, but also the largest tree of any species east of the Mississippi River. The Seminoles and other Native American groups who lived throughout central Florida used this tree as a landmark. In the late 19th century, the tree attracted visitors even though much of the surrounding land was swamp. Reaching the tree was done by leaping from log to log. A walkway was later constructed by the Works Progress Administration. In 1925, a hurricane destroyed the top of the tree, reducing its height from 165 feet 50 meters to 118 feet 36 meters. The Senator was named for Florida State Senator Moses Overstreet, who donated the tree and surrounding land to Seminole County for a park in 1927. In 1929, former U.S. President Calvin Coolidge reportedly visited the Senator and dedicated the site with a commemorative bronze plaque. A photo that was published of Coolidge and his wife near the tree was reported by the Orlando Sentinel to have been doctored. Gran Abuelo busy inventing the sundial, a tenacious cypress seed busted through the floor of a temperate rainforest in the south of Chile. That same organism would see off the Faroes, along with countless earthquakes, fires and centuries of logging to stand proudly as the oldest living thing on the South American continent roughly 3,500 years later. So what does it feel like to stand before such a venerable survivor? We trekked and tripped our way through the Andean foothills on Chile's southern coast for our own little meeting with El Gran Abuelo. South America's oldest living tree is a Fitzroy cupressoides, named so by the traveling geologist Charles Darwin in honor of the captain of his ship, Robert Fitzroy. Known as Ailurs in Spanish and Lahuan in the native Mapuche, these tall evergreen trees are native to the southern Andes in Chile and Argentina, and though they grow to more than 60 meters 196 feet tall, they do so very slowly, gaining just a millimeter in diameter every year. Ailurses contain special resins that help them stave off decomposition, even when buried or resting in water, which is a useful trait when it comes to longevity. Unfortunately, this and characteristics like a straight grain, elasticity, lightness and aesthetic appeal have made ailurses a very desirable construction material over a considerable period of time. Sarv abarca is a cypress tree that is considered among the most fascinating living things on this planet, which favors the eye and soul by its beautiful, majestic look. Cypress of Abarca, which is likewise called the Zoroastrian Sarv, is the oldest life form in Iran. The beauty and greatness of the tree will leave a great impact on you when you stand in front of it. This old tree is situated in Abarca, Yazd province of Iran, which is between three historical cities of Isfahan, Yazd, and Shiraz. Abarca itself is an unbelievable spot located on the once junction of the Silk Road and has numerous exquisite adobe houses and antiquity of over 4,000 years. In the city, you can discover a lot of tourist attractions, including Robat Castle, Yakshal Keshti, Nezam al-Mulki Gate, Darb Gale area, Ali Dome, Aziz al-Din al-Nasafi Tomb, and Anthropology Museum. Among them, a Ghazad mansion and its 18-meter wind catcher dates back to the Qajar time and is one of the extraordinary landmarks. You can even see its image on the 2000 Toman bill of Iranian currency. Yanjuni from churches, chapels and castles, Wales is home to some wonderful historic attractions, but one of the oldest might surprise you. It's an ancient yew tree in Yanjuni, dating back over 4,000 years. This tree is a remarkable living survivor from prehistoric times and probably germinated in the Bronze Age, about 4,000 years ago. Today it's situated in the grounds of St. Degane's Church for all to see. Yew trees survive by regenerating. The center of the Yanjuni yew is a void, where the original growth has died back over the millennia. Younger wood grows around the void, drawing nutrients from the prehistoric roots. Celts regarded the yew as a sacred tree, and were fascinated by its ability to die and regrow. The girth of the tree at the ground level is 10.75 meters, 35.3 feet. The area around the Yanjuni yew may have been used for worship before Christianity came to Wales, with the site later being adopted for Christian purposes. The tree had to be enormous already by the time when the first Christian shrine was established here. It is possible that this happened in early medieval times, although the current church is not earlier than the 13th century. Whatever the sequence of events, instead of a yew being planted near a church, as was common across Britain, this church was planted near a yew. Next to the wall of the church are two standing stones, with the third as a stepping stone between them. Primitive crosses are etched in each of these stones, a common practice of the church to Christianize paganic idols. This weird portal now leads directly in a blind wall, but who knows where it led before the church was built here. In the mid-1990s, the church oil tank stood in the space between the two trunk fragments. However, this was moved when it was realized that the tree was ancient. When this tank was built, a lot of the dead wood was removed from the site, which makes dating the age of the tree more difficult for dendrochronologists. Methuselah. As old-timers go, the Methuselah tree in California's White Mountains takes some beating. According to research, this ancient bristlecone pine will be 4,851 years old this year. Not a bad performance when it comes to avoiding the Grim Reaper. Nor is the Methuselah on its own in making recent headlines about longevity. Researchers announced they had found beds of kelp off Shetland, and in Irish and French Atlantic waters, that had survived for 16,000 years. A day later, an international group of scientists announced that they had revived microbes which had lain dormant in seabed mud for 100 million years. The physiological limits of life on Earth can be pushed to fairly spectacular limits, it would seem, although it should be stressed that each of these feats reveal different aspects of the aging process. The Methuselah tree's longevity reveals the remarkable endurance of a single entity. The kelp story reflects the great age of a population, but not of its individual plants, while the revival of ancient seabed microbes shows how suspended animation can be extraordinarily long-lasting. Nevertheless, there is a common theme to these recently announced research results. As an expert on aging, Professor Tom Kirkwood of Newcastle University points out, these stories all speak to the endurance of life, and at a time when we have become fixated with ideas about our own mortality. Prometheus. Sitting among a small copse of pine trees on Nevada's Wheeler Peak are the remains of a tree once known as Prometheus, which, while it lived, was thought to be almost 5,000 years old. It was felled thanks to the careless hubris of an overeager scientist. The Great Basin bristlecone pine was known alternately as Prometheus and WPN 114. It once sat among its similarly large brethren, having been growing for well over 4,000 years, longer than any other non-clonal organism on the planet, or so they thought at the time. While there were giant plant systems that had been known to have lived for up to 40,000 years or more thanks to a system of self-replication and replacement, meaning that no part of the organism was ever as old as the whole, Prometheus had survived and grown from a sapling for thousands of years. Unfortunately, in the 1960s, a researcher searching for the world's oldest trees came across Prometheus grove. The graduate student received permission to take a sample from the trunk, but his borer jammed in the ancient wood. He cut the tree down to retrieve the tool, and upon counting the rings realized his historic mistake. He had felled a tree older than any other ever cut down. Controversy swirled around the event and the errant grad student, but in the end the parks department simply upped their security around the other ancient bristlecone pines. Today the remains of the tree can still be found on Wheeler Peak, cracked and separated, but ancient and kind of sad all the same. Old Jaco. When Old Jaco was first discovered in Sweden in 2008, it was declared the world's oldest tree and estimated to be about 10,000 years old. While Old Jaco has come to be known as the world's oldest tree, it is not quite as old as the Jurupa oak, over 13,000 years, which was discovered a year later. Also, Jaco is only an eighth of the age of 80,000-year-old Pondo. Like both of those older trees, Old Jaco is also a clone, but it isn't a colony like Pondo and the Jurupa oak. Instead, old Jaco regenerates new trunks, branches, and roots in the same spot. The root system of old Jaco is about 10,000 years old, while its trunks usually only survive for about 600 years before a new clone tree resprouts in its place. Jurupa oak. The Jurupa oak, the tree's name, it is a Palmer's oak, is another clonal colony tree that has survived for thousands of years by cloning itself. Only discovered within the past decade, the Jurupa oak is over 13,000 years old. Its age was estimated by researchers based on the size of the colony and the growth of individual stems. Another unique thing about the Jurupa oak is that it is the only Palmer's oak in the area because the species typically prefers to live in wetter and more mountainous areas. The Jurupa Mountains are arid and at a lower altitude. In 2009, when the Jurupa oak was first discovered, the tree had about 70 clusters of stems, was 2.5 kilometers (1.55 miles) in width, and 1 meter (3.28 feet) in height. Pondo in the Fish Lake National Forest in Utah, a giant has lived quietly for the past 80,000 years. The trembling giant, or Pondo, is an enormous grove of quaking aspens that take the forest as a single organism metaphor and makes it literal. The grove really is a single organism. Each of the approximately 47,000 or so trees in the grove is genetically identical and all the trees share a single root system. While many trees spread through flowering and sexual reproduction, quaking aspens usually reproduce asexually, by sprouting new trees from the expansive lateral root of the parent. The individual trees aren't individuals but stems of a massive single clone, and this clone is truly massive. Pondo is a Latin word that translates to I spread. Spanning 107 acres and weighing 6,615 tons, Pondo was once thought to be the world's largest organism, now usurped by thousand-acre fungal mats in Oregon, and is almost certainly the most massive. In terms of other superlatives, the more optimistic estimates of Pondo's age have it as over 1 million years old, which would easily make it one of the world's oldest living organisms. Some of the trees in the forest are over 130 years old. Unfortunately, the future of the giant appears grim. According to Paul Rogers, an ecologist at Utah State University, the trembling giant is in danger. While the mature stems of Pondo routinely die from the eternal problems of pests and drought, the regenerative roots of the organism that are responsible for Pondo's resilience are under attack as well. Rogers reported a marked absence of juvenile and young stems to replace the older trunks, blaming overgrazing by deer and elk. Without new growth to replace the old, the trembling giant is vulnerable to a catastrophic sudden withering and shrinking. Thank you for watching.